get to the news. President Biden made a surprise trip last week to Ukraine by taking a 10-hour train ride, or as the guy next to him thought, an 80-hour train ride. President Biden reportedly had a difficult time sleeping last week on the overnight train ride from Poland to Ukraine and read a briefing memo on the history of Kyiv, and that didn't put him to sleep? That would have put the last president into a multi-year coma. In a new interview, President Biden said that he has, quote, other things to finish before launching a full-blown presidential campaign, like, for instance, Yellowstone. According to a new report, then-President Trump was so upset with late-night host Jimmy Kimmel's criticism that he asked White House staffers to call Disney executives. And he was apparently so upset with me that he called my boss.
That's right, Seth. And I told him to get lost.
Good looking out, Wally. Thank you.
Yep.
Vice President Kamala Harris spoke today in South Carolina about the Biden administration's expansion of high-speed internet access, although it didn't help matters that the live stream started like this. And we're live. House Republicans are reportedly planning to hold hearings on the Biden administration's response to the toxic train wreck in East Palestine, Ohio. And one way or another, they're going to figure out how Hunter Biden sabotaged that train. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' book, The Courage to Be Free, is set to be released tomorrow. Look for it wherever books are legal. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis held a 3-day retreat over the weekend for top donors and supporters at the Four Seasons in Palm Beach. For a $10,000 donation, you got to meet him, and for $20,000, you didn't. An alligator was recently captured in Brooklyn's Prospect Park and taken to the Bronx Zoo. You made it move from Brooklyn to the Bronx? At least turn it into boots and let it die with dignity. Firefighters in North Carolina recently rescued a newlywed couple that got stuck in an elevator for 2.5 hours after their wedding. The couple is doing fine and ready to get on with their divorce. And finally, a woman in Georgia was arrested last week after she allegedly drove her car into a Popeyes restaurant because her order did not have biscuits. Apparently, those biscuits are the only thing that take the edge off the meth. President Biden held an event yesterday at the White House celebrating Black History Month. Also being held at the White House, everyone's breath. That's right, President Biden held an event yesterday at the White House celebrating Black History Month. Man, how many times do you think he casually mentioned knowing Obama? So I was talking to Barry the other day. Sorry, Barack Obama. Former co-worker. When asked in a new interview if he's planning on running for re-election in 2024, President Biden joked that he needed to call First Lady Dr. Jill Biden to, quote, find out. Okay, but you know she's not that kind of doctor, right? Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill into law yesterday that takes away Disney World's self-governing status. So if you're at Disney, I have even more bad news. Now you're also in Florida. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said in a Twitter post last night that she was attacked by an insane woman inside a restaurant. Luckily, the incident was resolved after the restaurant took the mirror down. That's my outfit! According to a new poll, 66% of New York voters believe that Republican Congressman George Santos should step down, while the other 34% believe anything, apparently. Authorities in Minnesota recently arrested a man on suspicion of drunk driving after he allegedly fell asleep in an Arby's drive-thru. It's the rare occasion where drunk driving may have saved someone's life. A Chinese company has begun offering a device that simulates kissing using a set of silicone lips controlled by an app. Yeah, that's what it'll be used for. Well, I'm gonna sell this to you. kissing only, all right, man? Yeah. No, I love kissing. And finally, a man in California recently broke the Guinness World Record for most consecutive visits to Disneyland after visiting the park nearly 3,000 times. Even crazier, this guy's been to SeaWorld twice. President Biden kicked off House Democrats' three-day retreat tonight with a speech in Baltimore. Well, it was supposed to be a one-day retreat, but when that guy gets talking... The Biden administration said this week that federal agencies will have to remove TikTok from all government devices in 30 days. And if they're smart, Venmo. Matt? In a post yesterday on Truth Social, former President Trump accused Florida Governor Ron DeSantis of wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare and said he was a, quote, wheelchair over the cliff kind of guy, as opposed to Trump, who would never waste a perfectly good wheelchair. Mexican President Lopez Obrador pushed back against criticism yesterday of his recent electoral reforms and said, quote, there is more democracy in Mexico than could exist in the United States. Well, that's not the high bar it used to be. That's like me saying I'm a better tennis player than Richard Kind, who's backstage. And we're going to find out when he comes out if he thinks he could beat me in tennis, because I bet he probably could. During oral arguments yesterday in a case challenging President Biden's student debt forgiveness plan, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch said the program was unfair and failed to take into account people who had paid off their loans or never had them. Yeah, can someone, for once, think of the people who never had student loans? When do they get a break? That's like saying no Tinder. It's not fair to the people who already get laid. Television provider Dish Network confirmed yesterday that a previous outage was caused by a cybersecurity breach and not, as customers assumed, by a gentle rain. Dictionary.com yesterday unveiled new entries, including the word woke. Still not gonna look it up, said Republicans. A Florida woman was arrested last week after she told deputies during a traffic stop she had drugs in her body cavity and removed nearly 11 grams of crystal meth. Said the cops, ma'am, we pulled you over for a broken taillight. Still pretty impressive, though, officers. Fast food chain KFC today announced the return of the Double Down, a bun-free sandwich that substitutes bread with chicken so you can substitute hunger with self-loathing. And finally, the pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly announced today that it will cap the out-of-pocket cost of insulin at $35, and not a moment too soon. President Biden criticized Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday and suggested that her politics are causing Republicans to join the Democratic Party. Oh, come on. We can't even get Democrats to join the Democratic Party. According to a new poll, 68% of voters said that President Biden is too old for another term. I don't know. I mean, okay, he's an 80-year-old man, but the job is mostly telling long stories that don't go anywhere, signing whatever a young person hands you, and arguing with foreigners and drug companies. Man for the job, I say. The House Foreign Affairs Committee voted yesterday to advance a bill that would allow President Biden to ban TikTok. Ban it? He hasn't even figured out how to download it. Hello, TikTok customer service. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry said today that the U.S. should cease weapons sales and military contact with Taiwan. Oh, what are you going to do? Send another balloon? I'd like to see you try. Oh, damn, that was fast. Wow. It's right outside. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders recently released a new book titled It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. And if you still don't believe him, you can look at the price. That's right, Bernie Sanders recently released a new book titled It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. And if you like that, check out the rest of the books in his It's Okay to Be Angry collection. The Supreme Court heard arguments yesterday in a dispute between New York and New Jersey. It was the case of A versus O. Very subtle but real difference. The New York Times published a profile yesterday of a man who has lived his life mostly barefoot for the past 20 years, and bad news, he's on your flight. Producers have announced that actress Bebe Neuwirth will return for the revival of the sitcom Frasier to reprise her role as Lilith Stern, not returning Eddie the dog. Yeah, you guys thought you didn't like that barefoot joke. You didn't realize that was the heights. Officials at a zoo in Nebraska this week confirmed that a cheetah briefly escaped from its enclosure. Oh, good, only briefly. It's just a cheetah. How far could it have gotten? It was chasing Eddie. According to a new survey, the tooth fairy now leaves more than $6 per tooth on average, which explains the recent increase in 7-year-olds taking up hockey. And finally, a cruise line is now accepting reservations for the first ever 3-year-long cruise, 2 years with good behavior. And that was a